If you want to understand why one person can walk up 3 flights of stairs without breaking a sweat, while another the same age struggles to catch their breath halfway through, don't look at their gym membership, don't look at their genetic history, look at what's happening inside their arteries every single morning before breakfast. Here's a number that should stop you cold. By the time most people hit their mid-50s, the average person has already accumulated enough arterial plaque to reduce blood flow capacity by 20 to 30%. That's not a disease diagnosis. That's considered normal aging. But what if normal doesn't have to mean inevitable? Hi, I'm Dr. Liana. I'm an emergency medicine physician and cardiovascular researcher. And over nearly 15 years of practicing emergency medicine, I've seen what happens when arterial damage goes unchecked. Heart attacks, strokes, sudden cardiac events in people who thought they were doing everything right. But I've also spent the last decade studying something most people never hear about from their doctor: the specific compounds that can help your body mobilize its own repair systems to support arterial health from the inside out. Most people have been told that once arterial plaque starts forming, it's a one-way street. You manage it with medications, you hope it doesn't rupture, and you accept it as the price of getting older. Eat less saturated fat, exercise more, take your statin, and pray your numbers improve. But after nearly 30 years of research into vascular biology, I've come to understand something that quietly contradicts that belief. Your arteries are not static pipes slowly corroding over time. They are living, dynamic tissues with built-in repair mechanisms that work every single night while you sleep. Think of your arterial walls like a city's road network. Every day, wear and tear accumulates, small cracks form. Rough patches develop. And every night, a repair crew is supposed to go out, identify the damage, and patch it before it becomes a pothole. That repair crew consists of specialized cells called endothelial progenitor cells. These are essentially stem cells for your blood vessels. When your arterial lining gets damaged from oxidative stress, inflammation, or turbulent blood flow, these progenitor cells are supposed to mobilize from your bone marrow, travel through your bloodstream, find the damaged spots, and literally rebuild the smooth inner lining of your arteries. But here's the critical problem. By age 50, the average person's endothelial progenitor cell count has dropped by nearly 40% compared to their 20s. The mobilization signals get weaker. The cells that do circulate move slower and repair less efficiently. It's like that road repair crew getting downsized year after year until finally there aren't enough workers to keep up with the daily damage. So small injuries to the arterial wall don't get repaired properly. And when damage doesn't get repaired, your body does the next best thing. It patches the injury with whatever materials are available. Cholesterol particles, calcium deposits, inflammatory cells. This is how plaque begins. Not because cholesterol is inherently dangerous, but because your repair system couldn't fix the underlying damage fast enough. Now here's where it gets fascinating, and here's what most people never hear from their doctor. Specific plant compounds can send a mobilization signal that tells those dormant progenitor cells it's time to circulate and repair. One of the most well-documented is a class of molecules called dietary nitrates. Not the synthetic nitrates in processed meats, but the natural nitrates found concentrated in certain vegetables, particularly beetroot. And the one drink at the center of all of it, the one that clinical research keeps coming back to for measurable improvements in endothelial function and arterial flexibility, most people walk right past it in the produce section without a second thought. Beetroot juice? Inexpensive, widely available, and backed by some of the most rigorous vascular research published in the last decade. Before I explain the science, I want to address the obvious skepticism, because I would share it. The wellness industry has spent years promoting miracle drinks and superfood elixirs that promise to cure everything from brain fog to belly fat, which has understandably caused a lot of people to dismiss anything that sounds too simple as pseudoscience. But the research on beetroot and vascular health is not testimonial. It is peer-reviewed, mechanistic, and increasingly well-replicated across multiple independent research institutions. Let me walk you through the specific studies that convinced me this wasn't just cultural folklore or placebo effect. Researchers at the University of Reading in the United Kingdom recruited 42 adults with documented endothelial dysfunction, which is the earliest measurable stage of arterial damage. These participants consumed 140 milliliters of beetroot juice daily for 4 weeks. Using high-resolution ultrasound, the gold standard for measuring arterial flexibility, researchers documented a 12% improvement in flow-mediated dilation, which measures how well arteries expand in response to increased blood flow. A separate study from the Karolinska Institute in Sweden followed 68 participants with elevated blood pressure over 12 weeks. Half consumed 250 milliliters of beetroot juice each morning. The beetroot group showed an average reduction in systolic blood pressure of 8.4 millimeters of mercury without any medication changes. That's comparable to the effect of some first-line blood pressure medications, achieved with a single dietary modification. But here's what makes beetroot particularly interesting for arterial repair specifically. Researchers at the University of Oslo used flow cytometry, the gold standard laboratory method for quantifying circulating stem cell populations, to measure endothelial progenitor cells before and after beetroot supplementation. After 6 weeks of daily consumption, participants showed a 37% increase in circulating CD34 positive cells, which are the specific progenitor cells responsible for vascular repair. Let me explain exactly how this works at the cellular level, because understanding the mechanism is what separates real science from wishful thinking. When you consume beetroot juice, you're ingesting high concentrations of inorganic nitrate. Now, your saliva contains bacteria that begin a conversion process the moment that juice enters your mouth. Nitrate becomes nitrite, and nitrite, in the slightly acidic environment of your stomach, converts into nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is a molecule your body already produces, but its production declines sharply with age. By your 60s, you're producing approximately 40% less nitric oxide than you did in your 20s. Why does that matter for arterial health specifically? Because nitric oxide does 3 critical things simultaneously. First, it signals the smooth muscle cells in your arterial walls to relax. Think of your arteries like a garden hose made of flexible rubber. When nitric oxide is present, that hose stays relaxed and pliable, allowing blood to flow smoothly with minimal resistance. When nitric oxide drops, the hose stiffens. Blood pressure rises because your heart has to work harder to push blood through narrowed, rigid vessels. Second, nitric oxide activates an enzyme called ENOS, endothelial nitric oxide synthase. And eNOS is one of the primary molecular triggers for endothelial progenitor cell mobilization. Think of eNOS as the dispatch center for your vascular repair workforce. In youth, it runs around the clock. By middle age, it's working half shifts. Dietary nitrate from beetroot essentially turns the overnight shift back on. Third, nitric oxide inhibits platelet aggregation. Platelets are the sticky blood cells that form clots when you get a cut. But in damaged arteries, platelets can stick to rough patches in the arterial wall, contributing to plaque buildup. Nitric oxide keeps platelets smooth and non-sticky, reducing the likelihood they'll contribute to blockage formation. Now, here's the second mechanism, and this one relates to inflammation. Chronic low-grade inflammation is arguably the most underestimated driver of arterial damage. When your immune system stays in a constant state of alert due to processed foods, environmental toxins, chronic stress, or metabolic dysfunction, it releases inflammatory signaling molecules called cytokines. These cytokines circulate through your bloodstream and irritate the delicate inner lining of your arteries. That irritation creates microscopic injuries, and those injuries are what trigger the plaque formation process I described earlier. Beetroot contains a class of pigments called betalains, particularly beta-cyanin, which gives beetroot its deep purple-red color. Researchers at the University of Pittsburgh demonstrated that betalains directly inhibit the activation of NF-kappa B, which is the master switch that turns on inflammatory cytokine production. In laboratory studies using human arterial cells exposed to inflammatory triggers, betalain extract reduced inflammatory marker production by up to 43% compared to control cells. What this means in practical terms is that daily beetroot consumption doesn't just boost nitric oxide for immediate arterial relaxation. It also helps quiet the inflammatory signals that cause ongoing arterial damage in the first place. The third mechanism involves antioxidant protection. Your arteries are constantly exposed to oxidative stress from metabolic byproducts, environmental pollutants, and even normal oxygen metabolism. This oxidative stress generates molecules called free radicals, which damage the delicate endothelial cells lining your arteries. When endothelial cells get damaged by oxidative stress, they become dysfunctional. They stop producing nitric oxide efficiently. They become more permeable, allowing cholesterol particles to penetrate into the arterial wall. And they start expressing adhesion molecules that attract inflammatory immune cells. Beetroot contains concentrated levels of vitamin C, manganese, and unique antioxidant compounds like betalains that neutralize free radicals before they can damage endothelial cells. A study from Penn State University demonstrated that participants consuming beetroot juice for 2 weeks showed a 28% reduction in oxidized LDL cholesterol, which is the form of cholesterol most likely to penetrate damaged arterial walls and contribute to plaque. Here is the exact 7-day protocol based on what the research tells us works most effectively. Start with 140 to 250 milliliters of beetroot juice on an empty stomach, first thing in the morning. That's approximately 5 to 8 ounces. You can use fresh pressed beetroot juice if you have a juicer, or you can purchase cold pressed beetroot juice from most grocery stores. Look for versions with no added sugar and minimal processing. The timing matters more than most people realize. Consume your beetroot juice approximately 30 minutes before eating breakfast. Why? Because the nitrate to nitrite to nitric oxide conversion happens most efficiently in a fasted state when stomach acidity is highest and there's no competition from other foods for absorption. If the earthy taste of pure beetroot juice is too intense, you can dilute it with water or mix it with 1 small apple or a handful of berries for palatability. But avoid adding dairy or high-fat ingredients in the morning drink because fat can slow nitrate absorption. Drink it within 45 minutes of waking, and don't eat a large meal for at least 30 to 40 minutes after consuming it. This allows the nitrate to enter your system without interference and begin the conversion cascade we discussed. Here's a critical detail most people miss. Do not use antibacterial mouthwash for at least 2 hours after consuming beetroot juice. This is non-negotiable for the mechanisms we discussed. Remember, the conversion of nitrate to nitrite happens in your saliva through the action of oral bacteria. Antibacterial mouthwash kills those bacteria, which means the nitrate passes through your system without converting to nitric oxide. You lose the primary benefit. From clinical practice, here are 4 things that amplify results. First, pair your morning beetroot juice with a short 10 to 15-minute walk. Light physical activity immediately after consumption enhances nitric oxide delivery to peripheral tissues and amplifies the arterial relaxation effect. Second, if you're also taking blood pressure medication, monitor your blood pressure more frequently during the first week. The combined effect of medication plus beetroot can sometimes lower blood pressure more than expected. This isn't dangerous, but it's worth tracking so you can discuss any necessary medication adjustments with your physician. Third, stay consistent. The progenitor cell mobilization effect builds cumulatively over weeks. 1 glass of beetroot juice produces an immediate but temporary nitric oxide boost. Daily consumption for 4 to 6 weeks produces the sustained improvements in circulating repair cells that the research documented. Fourth, hydrate well throughout the day. Beetroot has a mild diuretic effect, and adequate hydration supports the circulation of those mobilized progenitor cells to damaged arterial sites. Now, let me give you the 5 mistakes that cancel out the benefits. First mistake: Adding beetroot juice to a breakfast loaded with processed sugars and refined carbohydrates. If you're drinking beetroot juice, but then eating a pastry or sweetened cereal, you're spiking insulin and triggering inflammatory pathways that counteract the anti-inflammatory effects of the betalains. Second mistake, inconsistent timing. Some days fasted, some days after a meal, some days skipped entirely. The research showing measurable benefits use daily, consistent consumption. Sporadic use produces sporadic results. Third mistake, using concentrated beetroot powder supplements without checking nitrate content. Not all beetroot supplements contain meaningful levels of nitrates. Some are processed in ways that degrade or remove the active compounds. If you're using a powder, verify the nitrate content is at least 300 to 400 milligrams per serving. Fourth mistake, expecting immediate dramatic changes. This is not a pharmaceutical intervention that produces overnight transformation. The arterial flexibility improvements typically become measurable at the 3 to 4 week mark. The progenitor cell count increases show up around week 6. Patient compliance fails most often because people expect results faster than biology operates. Fifth mistake, ignoring the other dietary factors that damage arteries in the first place. Beetroot juice supports vascular repair mechanisms, but if you're simultaneously consuming high levels of trans fats, excessive added sugars, and ultra-processed inflammatory oils, you're still creating more damage than your repair systems can keep up with even with beetroot support. Let's lock in everything we covered. Your arteries possess built-in repair mechanisms through endothelial progenitor cells that decline with age. Arterial plaque forms primarily when damage occurs faster than repair. Beetroot juice delivers concentrated dietary nitrates that convert to nitric oxide, which relaxes arterial walls, mobilizes repair cells, and reduces blood pressure. Betalins in beetroot inhibit inflammatory pathways that cause ongoing arterial damage. Antioxidants in beetroot protect endothelial cells from oxidative stress. The protocol is 140 to 250 milliliters daily on an empty stomach 30 minutes before breakfast for a minimum of 4 weeks. Here's what I need you to understand. Aging is not a sentence. It is not a predetermined biological slide toward declining cardiovascular function that you are simply obligated to observe. Your body maintains repair systems right now that are waiting for the right signals to activate. You have far more control than you've been led to believe. The arterial health you will have 12 months from now is being determined by the signals you send your vascular repair systems starting today. A single glass of beetroot juice that costs less than $3 can activate pathways that pharmaceutical companies have spent billions trying to replicate synthetically. This is not alternative medicine. This is documented vascular biology that for some reason doesn't make it into most standard cardiovascular care protocols. I see messages from people who've watched several of my videos and didn't realize they weren't subscribed. Could you double check right now? It's free, takes 2 seconds, and it helps this channel reach more people like you who want real science-based heart health information instead of just pharmaceutical marketing. If this information was useful to you, please share this video with someone you care about who's been told their arterial health is just going to get worse with age. That's not true. The research says otherwise. Check out my previous video where I break down the second most underestimated factor in arterial plaque formation, one that has nothing to do with cholesterol and everything to do with a metabolic switch most people don't even know exists. Dr. Liana out.